Imagine a highway stretching into the void, Interstate 40 swallowed by the Arizona night. The air hums with secrets, and a lone cedar tree sways under a moonless sky, whispering to no one. On Valentine's Day, 1982, something unspeakable waited. Beneath its branches, a truth so cold it could freeze your soul. The wind howled through the desert, carrying the scent of dust and decay along the endless ribbon of Interstate 40. An Arizona state trooper, his boots crunching against the gravel, shoulder, swept his flashlight across the barren ground. He was hunting for a tire, a mundane relic of a recent crash near the Monte Carlo truck stop, 11 miles from the sleepy town of Williams. The beam danced over rocks and brittle sagebrush, revealing nothing but the indifference of the wilderness. Then, as he neared a gnarled cedar tree, its roots clawing into the earth like skeletal fingers, his light caught something unnatural, a pale shape half buried in the dirt. His breath hitched. This was no tire, lying face down in the soil as if the earth itself had tried to claim her, was the body of a young woman. Her form was still, too still, her limbs twisted in a way that spoke of violence. The trooper's heart pounded as he knelt beside her, the cold seeping through his knees. Her clothes were gone, save for a few pitiful remnants scattered nearby. A white sweater with red stripes frayed and stained, a white bra torn at the strap, a handkerchief crumpled like a discarded prayer. The desert had not been kind. Animals had ravaged her hands, her feet, her face, gnawing away her identity, leaving only raw, jagged wounds where her features should have been. Her right ear was a tattered ruin, and her fingerprints, the last hope of naming her, were erased by nature's cruelty. The coroner's report came days later, its clinical words failing to capture the horror. She had been dead for 2 weeks, her body left to rot under the relentless sun and freezing nights. The cause of death was suffocation, a silent end, no broken hyoid bone, no obvious trauma beyond the marks of her final struggle. The desert had swallowed her story, leaving only questions. Who was she? Why here in this forsaken stretch of nowhere? Unable to name her, the authorities gave her a moniker tied to the day of her discovery: Valentine Sally. Not Jane Doe, but a name that carried the weight of lost love, of a heart-shaped tragedy etched into the Arizona sands. Feel the chill creeping up your spine as you picture her, alone, unnamed, her story dangling between dream and nightmare. What secrets did she carry, and who silenced them forever? The investigation began with a desperate canvass of the area, police fanning out like ghosts in the desert heat. They knocked on doors, questioned truckers, and scoured the truck stops that dotted the highway like beacons for the lost. A witness emerged, a man with weathered hands and a haunted look, claiming he'd picked up a young hitchhiker near Cordes Junction, an hour's drive from Flagstaff. She was young, he said, barely out of her teens, with a quiet voice and eyes that held too much pain. She'd come from Phoenix Valley, washing dishes in a greasy diner to scrape by. Her destination was New Jersey, a place she spoke of with longing, a family waiting, or so she hoped. Her plan was to reach the Little America truck stop in Flagstaff, where she'd find a ride east, carried by the kindness of strangers or the cruelty of fate. Days later, another voice broke the silence. Patty Wilkins, a woman with a mother's instinct and a heart heavy with regret, called the police. She ran the Monte Carlo truck stop, the same place where Valentine Sally's body would be found just 10 days later. On February 4th, she'd seen the girl, her face pale and drawn, stepping out of a rig in the company of a man old enough to be her father. He wore a two-toned leather vest, checkered like a chessboard, and a black cowboy hat adorned with a peacock feather that glinted in the neon glow. Patty's gut twisted at the sight. Something was wrong. The girl's smile was too forced, her laughter too hollow. Patty approached, offering help, but the girl waved her away, insisting she was fine. Yet she clutched her jaw, wincing with every word, a toothache gnawing at her. Patty, unable to turn away, crushed aspirin and pressed it into the girl's tooth, a small act of kindness that would later haunt her. When shown photos of the clothes found near the body, Patty's hands trembled. They were hers. The sweater, the bra, the handkerchief, worn by the girl she'd failed to save. Close your eyes. See Patty standing in the truck stops, flickering light, her heart screaming to act, but her feet rooted to the ground. Can you feel the weight of her regret, heavy as the desert night? Years passed, and Valentine Sally remained a specter, her case growing cold. In 1985, a false hope flickered when a forensic dentist declared her to be Melody Eugenia Cutlip, a girl missing from Istochata, Florida since 1980. He compared bite marks, reconstructed faces, and proclaimed a match. But Melody's mother, a woman broken by grief yet fierce in her certainty, refused to accept it. Her daughter was alive, she insisted, and in 1986, she was proven right when Melody walked through her door, unharmed. Valentine Sally was not Melody, and the search began anew, her shadow stretching longer across the years. The trucker, that man in the peacock feathered hat, became the focus of relentless pursuit. Patty's description painted a vivid picture, middle-aged, 50 to 60, with a swagger that hid something sinister. Composite sketches were drawn, their lines eerily similar to Royal Russell Long, a predator whose name sent chills through law enforcement. Long, convicted in 1985 for kidnapping 2 teenage girls, was a monster in human skin, his crimes whispering of darker deeds. But he died in prison, taking his secrets to the grave. If he was Valentine Sally's killer, justice would never touch him, and the wound of her death would never heal. Picture the sketches, their eyes staring through you, a face that might belong to a killer or a ghost. Do you dare wonder what he saw in her? What drove him to steal her breath? In 2005, the Coconino County Cold Case team took up the mantle, vowing to name the girl and find her killer. Hope reignited in 2018 when the Golden State Killer's capture showcased the power of DNA. The team enlisted Barbara Venter, a genealogist whose skill unraveled mysteries locked in bloodlines. They extracted DNA from Valentine Sally's remains, comparing it to countless profiles until a match emerged. A relative in Missouri. The trail led to a family in Bellefontaine Neighbors, where a girl had vanished in 1979, her juvenile record marked by runaways and rebellion. On February 22, 2021, nearly 4 decades after her death, the truth was spoken aloud. Valentine Sally was Carolyn Celeste Eaton, a 17-year-old whose dreams of escape led her to a nightmare. Carolyn's last moments with her family were on Christmas Day 1981. She stood in their living room, defiant, surrounded by 2 strangers who made her parents' blood run cold. Words were exchanged, sharp and bitter, and Carolyn fled into the night as she had so many times before. Her parents waited, expecting her to return when money ran dry or pride softened. But this time, the silence stretched forever. They never saw their daughter again, her absence a wound that never closed. Patty Wilkins, now older, her face lined with years of guilt, spoke to a journalist after the identification. "I knew something was wrong," she said, her voice trembling. "That girl, she was scared even if she wouldn't admit it. I saw it in her eyes, like she was already half gone. I should have done more, pulled her away, called someone, but I didn't. And that's a shadow I'll carry to my grave." Patty recalled how Carolyn and the trucker seemed close, their familiarity unsettling, as if they'd known each other longer than a single ride. "If you ever find who did this," she added, her voice hardening, "tell me. I want to look them in the eye and make them feel her pain. Feel the desert wind again carrying Carolyn's unheard cries. Her story lingers, a half-remembered dream that turns to terror when you wake. Carolyn Eaton was laid to rest in Mountain View Cemetery, just outside Williams, Arizona. Her grave stands apart, marked not by a cold gray slab, but by a vibrant red heart, etched with both her names, Valentine Sally and Carolyn Eaton. It's a beacon of remembrance, a promise that no one stays lost forever. The cedar tree still stands by Interstate 40, its branches swaying in the night, whispering her name to the stars. But the question remains, unanswered, a wound in the desert's heart. Who stole Carolyn's life, and what other ghosts walk that lonely road? The first time I saw blood in the barroom's neon glow, it looked like ink, black and final, seeping into snow. I didn't know I'd be the one to spill it. My name's not worth mentioning. Just another junior at a college buried in the Appalachian Mountains where winter nights clawed at your bones and the town wasn't yours to call home. The locals, those we called townies, stared at us students with eyes that held grudges older than the pines. Their resentment hung in the air, heavy as coal dust, and it simmered loudest at the club, a dive bar where cheap beer and bad blood mixed like gasoline and flame. It began with a rumor, low diner booths, passed over cold coffee like a ghost story. A townie, they said, haunted the club every Saturday night, a beast of a man with fists like sledgehammers and a knack for breaking more than just spirits. Last week he'd crashed a table of students, silent as a shadow, his presence sucking the air. He'd been drinking, and when a kid pushed back, he'd grabbed their thigh. When the guy gripped his arm, the townie erupted, sending 4 boys to the hospital with cracked skulls and shattered pride. The bar owner, another townie, just turned away, like it was watching a dogfight. Feel that pulse in your throat, knowing someone's out there waiting to break you. That's what I felt, hunched in my dorm, fists clenched. My dad taught me to stand tall, to never let a bully walk over my friends. I wasn't some frail kid. I'd scraped through college hustling, pool and poker, learning to read a man's bluff and dodge a fist. That night, as snow blanketed the campus, I made my choice. We're ending this, I told my buddies, my voice steady but my stomach twisting like a knotted rope. Their eyes met mine, a mix of fear and fury, and we nodded, sealing a pact. We weren't knights, but we weren't prey either. This was about carving our place in a town that wanted us gone. Let's pause for a second. Years ago, I was 16, playing poker in a smoky basement with guys twice my age. One caught me bluffing, grabbed my collar and nearly cracked my jaw. I talked my way out, but that fear, that raw animal panic, never left me. It fueled me, now as I prepared. The townie, they said, loved to punch the solar plexus, a blow that'd leave you gasping like a fish on land. I grabbed a stack of old magazines, Time, Newsweek, creased and yellowed, and taped them tight around my chest with black electrical tape. The paper crinkled, a makeshift shield, heavy but reassuring. Then I slipped an empty glass Coke bottle into my jacket pocket, its smooth neck cold against my palm. It wasn't a blade, but it'd do. My buddies watched silent, the dorm room thick with the weight of what we were about to do. We waited until 10 p.m., when the night was black and the bar would be alive. The club crouched at the town's edge, its neon sign buzzing like a trapped wasp. Inside, the air reeked of stale beer, cigarette smoke, and sweat, the jukebox droning some forgotten country tune. We took a table near the back, leaving one chair empty beside me, a silent invitation. I gripped a pitcher of Pabst Blue Ribbon, the glass slick with condensation, my eyes darting to the door. My buddies kept up a shaky banter, but I felt their nerves, sharp as a blade's edge. Ever feel the world slow, each breath heavy, waiting for a storm to break? One of my friends leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. He's here. My heart lurched, but I forced a casual sip of beer, my hand steady. I didn't look. couldn't risk giving us away. But I sensed him, a presence like a wolf slipping through the crowd. The bar's chatter faded, eyes turning our way, the air crackling with anticipation. Then the chair beside me scraped and he was there. The townie. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just sat, his bulk blotting out the light. His eyes, dark as coal seams, locked onto me, and I felt his intent, a promise of pain. Back to that poker game for a moment. The guy who grabbed me, he had the same look, empty, hungry, like he'd enjoy breaking me. I swore I'd never feel that helpless again. I turned to the townie, a smile curling my lips, slow and taunting. "Hey there, fella," I said, my voice light, almost mocking. His hand shot out, clamping my thigh, fingers digging like steel. Pain flared, but I held my smile, taking another sip of beer, my pulse roaring. "Well, you certainly aren't a shy one," I said, and my buddies laughed, the sound sharp in the hushed bar. His grip tightened, his stare unyielding, but I leaned closer, refusing to break. The bar was a tomb now, every breath held, the tension a live wire. I had a pinch of Copenhagen snuff tucked between my cheek and gum, its bitter sting anchoring me. Feel the world tilt like you're standing on a razor's edge. In one fluid motion, I spat the snuff into his eye. He recoiled, eyes squeezing shut, and I struck. My fist slammed into his throat, a savage blow that sent him sprawling. He crashed to the floor, chair splintering, his bulk a heap of stunned flesh. The bar owner's shout sliced through. "Outside!" We poured into the back alley, the cold air a shock, snow crunching under my boots. The townie staggered after us, his eyes burning with rage, a wounded beast. He swung a clumsy fist, but I blocked it, my arm throbbing. My hand found the Coke bottle, its weight a promise. See it now, the glass gleaming in the moonlight, a weapon born of desperation. I swung, the bottle cracking against his skull, the sound a dull, sickening thud. Blood trickled from his temple and he stumbled, legs buckling. I kicked his knees and he fell, snow staining red beneath him. My buddies closed in, our steel-toed Doc Martens a storm of blows. The alley rang with the rhythm of impact, his grunts fading to whimpers, then sobs. Ever feel power twist into something ugly, something you can't unsee? We didn't stop, sweat blinding me, the cold air searing my lungs. His cries clawed at me, but I kept swinging, the bottle heavy in my hand, until sirens wailed, sharp and close. "Run!" I yelled, and we fled, boots pounding, the alley a blur of shadow and snow. Word came later. An ambulance had hauled the townie away, broken and unconscious. We avoided the club after that, the memory a wound we didn't touch. A year later, I went back, driven by a gnawing need to see. There he was, in a wheelchair by the bar, a shadow of the giant he'd been. His hands shook, his eyes sunken, and when they met mine, he looked away, quick and broken. Feel that guilt settle, heavy, as stone, knowing you've changed a man forever? I left, the cold air biting, telling myself he deserved it. Actions have consequences, but in the quiet of night I'm back in that alley. The snow falls, the bottle gleams, his sobs echo. I feel the magazines against my ribs, smell the blood, and wonder if I'm the monster. The Coke bottle sits on my shelf now, a relic of that night, its glass catching the light, whispering questions I can't answer. The doorbell pierced the silence of the night, a sharp, metallic chime that felt like a blade slicing through my dreams. It wasn't the kind of sound you'd expect at midnight in our crumbling neighborhood, a place where rusted streetlights flickered and shadows clung to every corner like living things. It was a warning, a signal that something was wrong, something that even a child like me, barely 10 years old, could feel in my bones. My mother, the only shield between us three kids and the dangers of this world, sensed it too. I didn't know it then, but that night would carve itself into my memory, a scar that would throb every time I heard a doorbell ring. I lay curled on a thin mattress in the bedroom I shared with my younger siblings, the air heavy with the damp, musty smell of our old apartment. The walls, stained with years of neglect, seemed to lean inward, trapping us in a space that felt more like a cage than a home. Our second-floor unit creaked with every gust of wind, the rusted window frames rattling as if trying to whisper secrets. My father, a truck driver, was gone again, his absence a void that left us exposed to the predators of this neighborhood, a place where whispers of break-ins, muggings, and worse were as common as the graffiti scrawled across the buildings. The second chime came slower, deliberate, as if the person outside knew we were listening, knew we were afraid. I heard my mother's footsteps, soft but urgent, as the floorboards groaned under her weight. Her voice, trembling yet firm, crackled through the ancient intercom. "Who's there?" No answer. Just a hiss of static, like the breath of something inhuman. She asked again, her tone sharper, but the silence that followed was heavier, more menacing. I pictured her standing in the dim hallway, her thin nightgown clinging to her frame, her hands clenched to keep the fear at bay. That night I didn't know what she saw through the window, but it was enough to stop her heart for a fleeting moment. She retreated to her room, but I caught the faint scrape of a drawer, the one where she kept my father's gun. It wasn't the first time she'd reached for it, but this time felt different. Not the frustration of an argument with Dad, not the worry of a feverish child. This was primal, the kind of fear that strips you bare, leaving only instinct. She settled in the living room, shrouded in darkness, refusing to turn on a light. I imagined her as a statue, frozen but vigilant, the gun resting in her lap like a silent promise to protect us. The third chime came after an agonizing pause, a taunt from someone or something playing a cruel game. This time she didn't speak. She glided to the window by the front door, her fingers trembling as they parted the frayed curtain, just enough to peer into the night. And then she saw them. Three figures, their faces hidden behind black masks, stood motionless under the flickering streetlight. They stared up at the window, their gazes locked on her, as if they'd known exactly where she'd be. Later, she told me, her voice breaking, "They didn't move, honey. They just stood there watching me like they were waiting for me to let them in." Their eyes, though veiled by shadow, seemed to burn through the glass, pinning her in place. She let the curtain fall, stumbling back, her grip tightening on the gun. She lunged for the phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands, her voice a desperate whisper as she begged for help. Meanwhile, my siblings and I slept on, oblivious to how close death had crept. The police arrived after an eternity, an hour that my mother said felt like a lifetime. When the doorbell rang again, she nearly screamed, certain the masked men had found a way inside. But it was only the officers, two weary men in uniforms, their flashlights slicing through the darkness. They swept the building's perimeter, their beams dancing across peeling walls, overflowing dumpsters, and the pitch-black alley behind our home. When they returned, one held a 4-foot length of rusted barbed wire, its jagged edges glinting under their light. "This yours?" he asked. My mother shook her head, her face drained of color. The officer exchanged a glance with his partner before saying, "Might belong to them. Can't say what they meant to do with it." She didn't speak, but I knew what she was thinking. Barbed wire, sharp enough to tear flesh, strong enough to bind, cruel enough to torture. She held me close as the officers left, promising to patrol until dawn. But the next morning, as my siblings and I headed to school, the police called again. They'd found footprints in the muddy alley, leading to our bedroom window. Deep, deliberate, marks as if someone had stood there for hours watching us sleep. They also found scratches on the window frame, thin gashes where a tool had tried and failed to pry it open. That window was just steps from my bed, a flimsy barrier between us and whatever lurked outside. I'll never forget my mother's eyes when she told me. The fear was gone, replaced by a hollow despair. She'd survived that night, but a part of her had died. The part that believed she could keep us safe in this place. She suspected our neighbor, a man whose leering stares followed her every time they crossed paths, who always seemed to know when my father was away. She had no proof, but a mother's instinct is never wrong. That night, I dreamed of those masked figures standing outside our window, their hands clutching barbed wire, whispering my name. The dream faded over time, but it never left me, a shadow that stirred whenever I felt too safe. 6 months later, my mother forced us to leave that neighborhood. My father, reluctant but broken by her ultimatum, agreed. We moved to a place where the sun poured through clean windows, where my mother could sleep without keeping one eye open. On my 12th birthday, I blew out candles in our new home, surrounded by light and laughter. But every time a doorbell rings, even now, a chill snakes down my spine as if those figures are still out there waiting in the dark. The Walmart at 2 a.m. was a ghost town, its fluorescent lights buzzing like dying insects. Shelves loomed in endless rows, casting shadows that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. In 2011, I stood in the snack aisle, oblivious, laughing over potato chips. Then the air turned heavy, and death walked in. It was the summer of 2011, and I was crashing on my buddy's couch in Atlanta, a city that felt both familiar and foreign. I'd landed a gig guest lecturing at a university, a chance to feel like a hotshot in my late 20s while still clinging to the reckless habits of my college days. My friend worked late shifts and my lectures were mostly in the afternoons, so our nights blurred into a haze of Wii Sports, cheap weed, and midnight runs to the 24-hour Walmart down the road. That fluorescent-lit superstore was our sanctuary, a place to grab pizzas, wings, and whatever else caught our bleary-eyed fancy. We'd stumble through the aisles, giggling like kids, unaware that one of those nights would sear itself into my soul. On the 4th night of our ritual, the air felt different, thicker, like it was holding its breath. My buddy got home from work around 1 a.m., his eyes red-rimmed but grinning. We lit up, the smoke curling around us as we battled it out on the virtual tennis court, our laughter echoing in his cramped apartment. By 2 a.m., hunger hit hard, and we grabbed our jackets, piling into my beat-up sedan for the short drive to Walmart. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered under the sodium glow of streetlights. Inside, the store was a cavern of silence, broken only by the faint hum of lights and the occasional squeak of a distant cart. The air smelled of popcorn and cleaning fluid, a strange mix that clung to your skin. We wandered to the snack aisle, our basket already heavy with frozen pizzas and a bag of buffalo wings. That's when the argument started. Stupid, really, but the kind of thing that feels profound when you're high. I wanted sour cream and onion ruffles. He was dead set on cheddar. We stood there, tossing the bags back and forth, our voices bouncing off the shelves. You ever notice how the simplest moments can blind you to the danger creeping closer? I was mid-sentence, ready to make a case for my chips, when a prickle ran down my neck. Someone was watching. At the far end of the aisle, a man stood motionless, his silhouette sharp against the glare of the lights. He wasn't browsing, wasn't reaching for anything. His eyes were locked on us, unblinking like a predator sizing up prey. I froze, my hand still clutching a bag of chips. I didn't want to look directly at him. Some instinct told me that meeting his gaze would be a mistake. Instead, I glanced at my buddy, hoping he'd notice too, but he was still rambling about cheese dust. I shifted my weight, trying to check the guy out in my peripheral vision. He hadn't moved, but his stare burned into me, heavy and wrong. Then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife, I saw another figure at the opposite end of the aisle. Another man. Same posture, same chilling focus. My heart stuttered. This wasn't a coincidence. I opened my mouth to warn my friend, but the words caught in my throat when I realized the second guy wasn't looking at us. He was staring past me, straight at the first man. Their eyes locked across the aisle, a silent challenge that turned the air electric with menace. My mind, foggy from the night's indulgences, took a second to catch up. This wasn't about us. We were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Feel your pulse quicken as you stand there, trapped between two strangers whose hatred you can taste. The world slows, and every sound, the hum of lights, the rustle of your jacket, becomes a scream. It happened so fast. The first man's hand darted to his waistband and I saw it. A flash of black metal against the red of his boxers. A gun. My body moved before my brain could process, grabbing my buddy's arm and yanking him to the floor. We hit the tiles hard, the cold seeping through my jeans as the first shot rang out. The sound was deafening, not like in movies, but a raw, jagged roar that echoed off the shelves, splintering into 1,000 shards of noise. Another shot followed, then another, the air alive with invisible death. I pressed my face to the floor, the smell of dust and spilled soda filling my lungs. My buddy was screaming, his voice a frantic loop of curses, but I barely heard him over the pounding of my own heart. I squeezed my eyes shut, every muscle braced for pain that never came. The shots kept coming, 5, 6, maybe more, each one a hammer against my skull. I pictured bullets tearing through the air above us, shredding bags of chips, punching holes in the metal shelves. In that moment, I was sure we were dead. I saw my life flicker, not like a movie reel, but in fragments. My mom's smile, a beer with my buddy, the lecture I'd never give. Then, as suddenly as it began, the gunfire stopped. The silence was worse, a suffocating void that pressed against my ears. My buddy's screams had faded to a whimper, and for one terrifying second I thought he was gone. I reached out, my hand shaking, and felt his arm, warm, alive. Relief flooded me, but it was fleeting. We weren't safe yet. I lifted my head just enough to see the aisle. It was empty. No bodies, no blood, just scattered chips and a can of soda rolling lazily across the floor. The men were gone, vanished like ghosts. My buddy's eyes met mine, wide and glassy with shock. We didn't speak. There were no words for this. Then, movement caught my eye. An employee, a kid barely out of high school, sprinting toward a fire exit. Instinct took over. I hauled my friend to his feet, and we ran, our shoes slapping against the tiles, the exit's red glow our only lifeline. We burst into the parking lot, the night air biting our faces. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer. One became 2, then 4, then 6. Cop cars flooded the lot, their lights painting the asphalt red and blue, a chaotic dance of salvation. You're outside now, but the fear clings to you, a shadow you can't shake. The sirens scream, but they can't drown out the echo of those shots. We stood there shivering as officers stormed the store. The shooters were long gone, melted into the night. I kept scanning the lot, half expecting to see those men watching from the shadows. The cops took our statements, their questions blurring together. We described the men as best we could. One in a dark hoodie, the other in a gray jacket, both with eyes that held no mercy. Later, they told us the aisle had been riddled with 14 bullets. A miracle we hadn't been hit. I nodded, but the words felt hollow. Miracle or not, something had broken inside me. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the images. The glint of that gun, the endless echo of gunfire. The moment I thought my friend was dead. My university offered therapy, and I took it. Sitting in a sterile office as a kind woman helped me unpack the trauma. She suggested I research shootouts, a way to reclaim control by understanding. I dove in, reading about bullet wounds, gang, rivalries, the physics of small caliber weapons. It didn't help. Knowledge couldn't erase the feeling of lying on that floor, waiting for death. I took paid leave, avoiding crowded places, jumping at every loud noise. Even now, years later, passing a Walmart triggers it, a tightness in my chest, a memory of that aisle. I think about the what-ifs. What if I hadn't seen that gun? What if we'd picked a different aisle, a different night? We were just two guys looking for snacks caught in a war we didn't understand. The cops never caught the shooters, or if they did, they never told us. Maybe they hit each other, maybe not. I didn't see blood, but I learned later that gunshot wounds don't always bleed right away. The not knowing is its own kind of torture. I see that night in flashes, like a dream that turns to nightmare. The fluorescent lights, the cold floor, the silence after the storm. And I wonder, every time I walk into a store, if death is waiting in the next aisle. The shadow moved before the light did, a flicker in the corner of my eye, too human to be a trick of the dark. 5 years ago, I called a small rental house in a quiet neighborhood home. It wasn't much, peeling paint, creaky floors, but it had a warmth, a charm that made it mine. The only flaw was the crawl space, a square wooden hatch in the laundry room floor, flush and locked tight. I never touched it, imagining pipes tangled in cobwebs, a dusty void I'd rather forget. But some voids don't stay buried, and some locks don't keep things out. Feel that prickle on your neck, like something's watching from a place you can't see? That's where my story begins. I was 27, working long hours at a marketing firm, my days a blur of deadlines and coffee. The neighborhood was a haven. Tree-lined streets, kids on bikes, porch lights glowing soft at dusk. But that evening, I dragged myself home late, my head pounding from a brutal day. All I wanted was a hot shower and my bed's embrace. As I fumbled with my keys, the porch light buzzed, casting jagged shadows. I stepped inside, the house cool and still, but something stopped me cold. The laundry room light was on, a faint, yellow glow spilling into the hall. Did I leave it on? I was sure I'd flicked it off that morning, but stress makes you sloppy, right? I shut it off, the switch cold under my finger, and pushed the thought away. Let me take you back for a moment. When I was 19, I lived in a dorm with a roommate who sleepwalked. One night, I woke to her standing over my bed, eyes blank, whispering my name. It was harmless, but that violation, someone in your space, uninvited, stayed with me. That night, I tossed in bed, the house settling around me, its sighs too loud in the dark. Around 2 a.m., a sound pulled me upright, heart thudding. A soft, rhythmic thump, like a heartbeat trapped in wood, coming from the laundry room. At first, I blamed the wind, rattling the old windows, but the noise was too steady, too alive. Lie still, let it pass, I told myself. But curiosity clawed at me. I grabbed my phone, its screen a weak shield of light, and tiptoed down the hall, the floor cool against my bare feet. The laundry room was a cave of shadows, the washer looming, like a silent sentinel. I flicked on the light, wincing at its glare, and scanned the room. Nothing. The thumping had stopped. leaving a silence that pressed against my ears. Then I saw it. The crawl space hatch, slightly ajar, a sliver of black gaping beneath. My stomach lurched. I'd checked that lock when I moved in, its bolt rusted but firm. No way I'd left it open. Breathe, it's just an animal, I thought, picturing a raccoon or rat. I slammed the hatch shut, the wood heavy, and dragged a box of detergent over it, its weight a flimsy comfort. Back in bed, I stared at the ceiling, the thump echoing in my mind, a warning I couldn't unhear. The next morning, sunlight softened the fear. I called my landlord, a gruff man named Carl, and asked about pest issues. "Never heard of any," he said, surprise in his voice. "But I'll send someone to check." I felt foolish, my panic childish in the daylight. That night I doubled down, checking the hatch, locked tight, and stacking a chair on top, its legs scraping the floor. No noises came, and I drifted to sleep, chiding myself for jumping at shadows. Ever convince yourself you're safe, only to feel the world shift beneath you? At 3 a.m. I woke, my body rigid, the air too heavy. My bedroom door was inching open, a slow, deliberate motion, the hinges silent unless pushed just so. I'd closed it before bed, I always did. My breath caught, shallow and sharp, as soft footsteps shuffled across the floor, each one a needle, in my spine. They stopped by my bed and I felt it, a presence close, alive. Its breath a faint rasp in the dark. My phone was on the nightstand, just beyond reach, mocking me. "Move now," my mind screamed, and with every ounce of will I lunged, grabbing the phone, its flashlight blinding. I swung it toward the intruder, and there he was, a man, crouched low, his face pale as bone, eyes wide and unblinking, like a creature caught in a trap. See him now, his gaunt cheeks, his stare, a mirror of your own terror. I screamed, a raw, primal sound, and bolted, my bare feet slapping the floor. I didn't look back, didn't think, just ran, out the front door, across the dew-slick grass, to my neighbor's house. I pounded their door, my fist bruising, until they let me in, their faces blurred by my panic. They called the police, and I sat, shivering, wrapped in a blanket, the man's eyes burned into my mind. When the officers arrived, they searched my house, their radios crackling. They found him, curled in the crawl space, a nest of filth around. Him, a mattress stained with sweat, food wrappers and trinkets stolen from my life. A hairbrush, a scarf, a photo of me from a drawer. The lock on the hatch had been pried open, its metal warped. He'd been there for days, maybe weeks, a parasite in my home. The worst came later. The police found a notebook, its pages filled with my life in his scrawl. When I left for work, 7:45 a.m. When I came home, 6:30 p.m. What I wore, blue dress, black sneakers. Plans, they said, but wouldn't share, their faces tight with pity. Feel that violation, your life stripped bare, owned by a stranger? I moved out the next week, crashing with friends, their voices a distant hum against my dread. I'd wake, heart racing, sure his breath was in the room, his eyes watching from the dark. 5 years on, I still check locks twice, scan shadows for his face. I don't know how he got in, how long he watched before I felt him. But I know this, some doors, once opened, never close. The sea sang to me that evening, a low, haunting lullaby that promised adventure but hid a hunger for our souls. I was 14, standing at the helm of our small boat, my hands gripping the wheel as the salty wind whipped through my hair. Western, Port Bay stretched endlessly before us, its golden waves shimmering under the dying sun. My father's hand rested on my shoulder, guiding me, his laughter mingling with the hum of the engine. My mother smiled, her eyes soft but wary, while my Older brother leaned over the bow, shouting about dolphins he swore he saw. We were a family, whole and happy, sailing into what felt like forever. But the sea is a thief, and that night it stole everything, leaving me alone with the weight of my own survival. Our boat was a relic, its patched hull a patchwork of promises we trusted too blindly. My father, a man who saw good in everyone, had rented it for a rare family escape from his grueling job as a mechanic. He'd planned this trip for weeks, his face lighting up as he talked about teaching us to fish. My mother, always the cautious one, had checked our life jackets twice, her fingers lingering on mine as if she sensed the danger. My brother, 16 and fearless, teased her for worrying, his grin wide as he dared the sea to challenge him. I was proud to steer, my heart swelling with the thrill of command, unaware that the boat's rotten core was already crumbling beneath us. The first hint of doom was a shudder, a deep groan from the hull like the cry of a wounded animal. I tightened my grip on the wheel, glancing at Dad, whose smile faltered. My brother's voice cut through the air. "There's water in here." Panic surged as Dad dove below, his boots slipping on the deck. I saw the fear in his eyes as he emerged, water sloshing around his knees. "It's flooding," he shouted, his voice cracking. Mom grabbed us, her hands trembling but firm, urging us to stay close. The boat tilted, a sickening lurch that sent us sprawling. Waves crashed over the rails, cold and merciless as the world spun into chaos. One second I was steering, the next I was in the sea, choking on salt, my family torn from my reach. The water was alive, a frigid beast that clawed at my skin and dragged me under. My life jacket buoyed me, but the cold was a knife, slicing through muscle and bone. Darkness swallowed the sky, the sun gone as if it had never been. I screamed for my family, my voice lost in the roar of the waves. Mom's silhouette flickered nearby, her arm outstretched, but the current pulled her away. Dad and my brother were shadows, their forms fading into the black. "Swim!" Mom's voice broke through, desperate and raw. I kicked, my legs burning, my lungs screaming, driven by a primal need to reach her, to save them. But the sea had other plans, and it was hungry. Hours bled into a fever dream of cold, pain, and terror. The sea was a void, endless and uncaring, mocking my every stroke. My mother's voice grew faint, her strength ebbing as the waves battered her. I reached for her, our fingers brushing, but the current ripped us apart. I sobbed her name, but only the gulls answered, their cries sharp and cruel like laughter from the abyss. I imagined sharks below, their fins brushing my legs, though the darkness hid them. The shore was a cruel mirage, a faint glow that never grew closer. My body was a wreck, my arms leaden, but I swam, fueled by guilt and a fading hope. If I make it, they will too. The mudflats of French Island met my feet like a reluctant savior, the ground thick and greedy, pulling at my legs. I collapsed, shivering, my skin raw from salt and thorns. The island was a ghost, its sparse trees clawing at the sky, its silence heavier than the sea's roar. I called for my family, my voice a broken whisper, but the wind mocked me, carrying it away. Stumbling through the bush, I felt thorns tear my flesh, each step a battle against collapse. A house appeared, a dim light in its window like a beacon. I pounded on the door, my fists bloody, my sobs choking me. The strangers inside pulled me in, their faces blurred by my tears. They called the Coast Guard, their voices soft but hollow, and I clung to their warmth, knowing it couldn't save my family. Morning brought the truth, cold and unyielding. The Coast Guard found my mother, my father, my brother off Fairhaven, their bodies still. their faces frozen in a peace I couldn't fathom. The news shattered me, a grief so vast it felt like drowning again. I was the only survivor, a cruel twist that branded me with guilt. Why me? Why not them? I replayed every moment, torturing myself with what-ifs. Could I have swum faster, held Mom longer, found Dad and my brother in the dark? In my dreams, they stood on the shore, water streaming from their clothes, their eyes empty. You left us. For 5 years, I was a shell, lost in a haze of liquor and pills. Water was my enemy. Pools, rivers, even rain triggered panic. My breath, stolen by memories of that night. I avoided the sea, its image a wound that festered. But my daughter's birth changed me. Her tiny hand in mine sparked a will to live, not just survive. My therapist suggested exposure therapy, starting with a local pool. At first, I couldn't breathe, even standing in shallow water, my heart racing as if the sea was pulling me under. A swim coach, moved by my story, offered to help. Over a year, we fought my fear, each lap a rebellion against the past. My triumph came in a charity swim across the Rip, a brutal stretch of water known for its deadly currents. I stood on the shore, the sea before me, its waves whispering memories of loss. But I felt my family's presence not as ghosts, but as strength. I swam not to escape, but to honor them, raising money for a domestic violence charity, a cause tied to my own unspoken scars. The sea no longer owned me, but its irony lingered. It had killed my family, yet it was the path to my salvation. Years later, I walked the beach near Fairhaven, my daughter's laughter mingling with the waves. I lay flowers by the water, a quiet ritual for those I lost. The sea watches, silent now, its hunger sated. But I know its truth, it gives, it takes, and it never forgets. And neither do I. The Waffle House neon sign flickered yellow against the midnight sky, its glow spilling over the cracked asphalt of the parking lot. The air was thick with the scent of grease and gasoline, a quiet hum of danger lurking beneath the surface. It was the last Saturday before spring break ended, and I never imagined a flat tire would lead us into a fight for our lives. The weekend before spring break faded was always electric. A final burst of freedom before school dragged us back. It was my senior year, 1998, and I was riding high with my crew. Keith, a junior with a cocky grin, Kim, his girlfriend, sharp and steady, and Seth, the quiet one who always had your back. We'd crammed into Keith's Mustang, its engine growling as we sped to a late-night movie. Some action flick we'd forget by morning. The theater's popcorn lingered on our clothes as we laughed our way out, piling back into the car for a ritual stop at the Waffle House. It was our spot. Cheap hash browns, strong coffee, and the kind of vibe that made you feel invincible. We slid into a booth, the vinyl sticking to our jeans, and ordered a spread of waffles and bacon. A couple of friends from school showed up and time slipped away, our laughter drowning out the jukebox. By the time we glanced at our watches, it was past 1 a.m., way beyond our curfews, including Keith's, who was supposed to be the responsible driver. We tossed cash on the table and bolted for the Mustang, the night air cool against our flushed faces. That's when we saw it. The rear left tire, flat as a pancake, sagging against the rim. My stomach dropped. You ever feel the world shift like a trap snapping shut? That's what that tire felt like. A chain tying us to this lot. Panic flared, but Kim stepped in, her voice calm. We'll fix it. Who's done this before? All eyes turned to me. I'd changed a tire once, 2 summers ago, under my dad's watchful eye. I sighed, rolling up my sleeves. Keith, where's the spare? He blinked, then shrugged, his nonchalance grating. I bit back a curse and popped the trunk, digging through a mess of clothes, soda cans, and random junk. After what felt like hours, my fingers grazed the spare tire, half buried under a gym bag. The jack and lug wrench were there too, cold and heavy. I hauled them out, the metal clinking against the asphalt. Kim knelt beside me, her phone's flashlight cutting through the dark. Keith and Seth lounged on the curb texting, their indifference sparking irritation in my chest. I focused on the task, jacking up the car, the creak of metal echoing in the quiet lot. The spare was soft, underinflated, but it'd have to do. I loosened the lug nuts, my hands slick with sweat, the wrench's weight grounding me. Everything was going smoothly, until headlights swept across the lot, a car pulling in a few spaces away. My heart skipped. I knew that engine's roar, that jacked-up pickup truck. It was them. Feel the air thicken as those headlights pin you in place, like a deer staring down a hunter. You know trouble's coming, and there's nowhere to run. These weren't strangers. Last summer, 3 of the 4 guys in that truck had jumped our friend Mike at a party, leaving him bloodied and bruised. A few days later, Keith and I had run into them at a gas station, words flying, fists nearly following. Their girlfriends had pulled them back, but the threats lingered, a promise of unfinished business. Now, here they were, drunk and loud, spilling out of the truck like wolves scenting blood. I tightened the last lug nut, my hands shaking, willing the car to be ready. But it was too late. A slurred curse cut through the night, followed by laughter, sharp and cruel. I kept my head down, focusing on the tire, but Keith couldn't resist. He stood, tossing a taunt their way, his voice edged with bravado. Seth joined in, their words clashing with the college guy's jeers. Kim gripped my arm, her eyes wide. "Hurry," she whispered. I nodded, but doubt gnawed at me. There were 4 of them, bigger, older, and drunk. We were kids, out of our depth. The tension snapped when I heard footsteps, heavy and fast. I glanced up just as Keith stumbled back, hitting the ground hard. Kim's light vanished, her phone slipping from her hand. Seth was alone now, surrounded, his fists raised but no match for their numbers. Something primal surged in me. I grabbed the lug wrench, its cold steel biting into my palm, and charged. I didn't think, didn't aim, just swung, the wrench arcing through the air. I felt it connect, a dull thud against flesh, then another. The college guys turned on me, their faces twisted with rage, but I kept swinging. A blur of motion fueled by fear and fury. In that moment, I was unstoppable, a scared kid turned warrior. A voice cut through the haze, Seth, shouting my name, waving his hands. I froze, chest heaving, the wrench still raised. The college guys were gone, scattered into the night. Keith was on his feet, lowering the jack with Kim's help. The lot was empty, save for us and the Mustang. You're standing there, heart pounding, the wrench heavy in your hand. The fight's over, but the fear lingers, a ghost you can't outrun. We moved fast, tossing the tools into the trunk, piling into the car. Keith floored it, the Mustang lurching out of the lot, the spare tire holding, barely. I didn't check the lug nuts, didn't care. All I wanted was distance from that place. In the back seat, I caught my breath, questions spilling out. Seth answered, his voice steady. "They were about to jump me," he said. "Then you went berserk with that wrench. You hit at least 2 of them, maybe more. They ran like cowards." I stared at my hands, still gripping the wrench, my knuckles white. I barely remembered the fight, just flashes of motion, of survival. We made it home, the night swallowing our escape. For weeks I waited for sirens, for cops to knock on my door, but they never came. We never saw those guys again, their faces fading into memory. But the wrench stayed with me, a talisman of that night. I kept it in my closet, a reminder of what I was capable of. Hero or monster, I wasn't sure. Looking back, I see us as kids caught in a moment bigger than we were, fighting to prove something, to survive. And I wonder, every time I pass a Waffle House, if that neon glow hides another trap, waiting to spring. The hallway pulsed with a stench that wasn't just foul. It was alive, curling into your lungs like a hand that wouldn't let go. Back in my college days, I was the property manager at a 100-unit apartment complex in Charleston, a gig that felt like winning the lottery. Free rent, a paycheck for shuffling papers and scheduling maintenance crews, easy money for a 22-year-old. The building was a patchwork of lives, rowdy college kids blasting music, post-grad singles chasing dreams, young families with sticky-fingered toddlers. But one tenant stood apart, a man who seemed to carry silence like a shadow. I never knew his name, just saw him shuffling to the corner store once or twice a week. His face pale, his steps heavy, like he was dragging an unseen chain. Ever feel someone's absence louder than their presence? That's who he was to me. I felt a pang of pity for him. He lived alone in room 312. No visitors, no calls, maybe on disability, though I never pried. His door stayed shut, his life a mystery I didn't dare touch. That June, summer's heat settled over Charleston like a wet blanket, the air thick with salt and sweat. One morning, my phone buzzed with a complaint from a tenant in his building. "There's a smell in the hall," she said, her voice tight, like something died. I trudged over, expecting a spilled beer or a forgotten pizza. College kids, you know. But the third-floor hallway hit me like a wall, a sour, sickly odor, like vomit left to fester. I gagged, my eyes watering, and chalked it up to a prank gone wrong. Breathe shallow, you tell yourself, but the smell knows your lungs by name. Let me take you back for a moment. When I was 17, I worked summers at my uncle's butcher shop. The first time I smelled spoiled meat, I retched, the stench clinging to my skin for days. That memory stirred now, whispering warnings. I called the cleaning crew, and by noon they'd shampooed the carpet, the machine's hum drowning out the chatter of curious tenants. They sprinkled industrial-grade shake and vac, its chemical pine scent masking the rot, turning the hall into a sterile hotel lobby. I figured that was the end of it, the problem swept away with soap and grit. But 3 days later, my phone lit up again. 6 tenants, their voices sharp with disgust. "It's worse," one said. "It's everywhere." I stood in my car, the dashboard baking under the sun, my gut twisting. Something was wrong, deeper than a spill, darker than a prank. Then my phone buzzed again, a number I didn't know. A woman's voice, soft but strained, came through. "I'm his daughter," she said, calling from Michigan. "My dad in 312. He hasn't answered his phone in weeks. I'm worried. Can you check on him?" My heart sank, pieces falling into place like a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Summer's heat, the smell, his absence. It added up to something I dreaded. I called my maintenance guy, Joe, a burly man with a kind face, and told him about the call. "This ain't gonna be good," he said, his voice low. We met at the building, the sun scorching the asphalt, and climbed the stairs to 312. The smell hit us halfway up, no longer sour but thick, cloying, a living thing that coated our throats. Feel that dread, heavy as tar, knowing what's behind. That door? At his door we knocked, the sound hollow in the quiet hall. I don't know why we did. Hope, maybe, a last grasp at normalcy. No answer. The smell was unbearable now, seeping through the cracks, a promise of horror. I fumbled with my master key, my hands slick with sweat, and pushed the door open. The air inside was a fist punching us back. The stench was alive, a mix of rot and sweetness, and above it a sound, low, insistent, like 1,000 wings. Flies. Their buzz, a chorus of decay, swarmed the dim room. I slammed the door shut, my stomach heaving, and stumbled outside. Joe behind me, his face gray. We stood in the parking lot, the sun mocking our shock, and pieced together a plan. Cops. Fire. Department coroner. Someone else had to handle this. Within an hour, the building was a circus. Police taped off the hall, their radios crackling. Firefighters in masks pushed past, their boots heavy. The coroner arrived last, a thin man with tired eyes, his van a grim omen. They confirmed what we knew. The man in 312 was dead, had been for weeks. Natural causes, they said, maybe a heart attack, but the summer heat, 90s outside, 110 inside with no AC, had turned his body to liquid. "He's barely there," an officer muttered, his voice tight. The flies had claimed him, their hum a requiem for a life unnoticed. See those flies now, their wings glinting, feasting on what was once a man? The cleanup was a nightmare. The apartment was gutted, carpet ripped out, appliances hauled away, drywall torn to the studs. It cost $30,000, a number that burned in my mind. I learned there were companies for this, specialists in human remains, their vans unmarked, their work a secret most never see. They scrubbed and scraped, but the smell lingered, a ghost that wouldn't leave. Tenants moved out, whispering about curses, and filling 312 again was impossible. The new carpet, the fresh paint, it didn't matter. The air held a faint rot, a reminder of what had been. That night I lay awake, the man's face in my mind, pale, hollow, alone. I'd pitied him, but never reached out, never knocked. His daughter's voice haunted me, her worry a weight I couldn't shake. Ever wonder who notices when you're gone, or if the world just keeps turning? I quit the job a year later, the memory of 312 too heavy. I still drive past that building sometimes, its windows dark, and feel the smell, the flies, the silence of a man forgotten. Room 312 stays empty in my dreams, its door cracked open, waiting for me to step inside. The laughter of my friends echoed through the woods, but something darker waited in the pit, a shadow that would haunt me for decades. I was 12, maybe 13, a skinny kid with scabbed knees, running wild in the summer heat of our small town neighborhood. The air was thick with the scent of pine and dust, the kind of day where adventure felt just a step away. We were a pack of boys, bound by scraped knuckles and shared secrets, exploring the forest near my house. But that afternoon we stumbled into a scene so vile it seared itself into my soul, a memory that even now at 55 makes my hands tremble. What I saw in that pit wasn't just a boy. It was the face of evil, grinning through a child's eyes. Our neighborhood was a patchwork of modest homes, where kids roamed free and parents barely noticed. We called ourselves the gang, though we were more mischief makers than troublemakers. There was Tommy, the cautious leader, Jake, the daredevil, Billy, the mama's boy, Sam, the all-American jock, quiet Nate, and then the crazy kid, the one we tolerated but never trusted. He was different, always had been. His family was the richest on the block, their house a hulking thing with too many windows, but they paid him no mind. They called him smart, a free spirit, showering him with telescopes and science kits he never used. Instead, he'd smash them in fits of rage, his eyes glinting with something unhinged. We should have seen the signs, but we were kids, blind to the darkness brewing in him. That day the woods called us, their tangled paths promising mystery. The sun hung high, filtering through the canopy, casting dappled shadows that danced like spirits. We'd heard about a new construction site nearby, a foundation being dug for a house. The pit was a kid's paradise. Piles of gravel, loose dirt, and endless possibilities for games. We raced through the trees, our sneakers crunching, on pine needles until we hit an unpaved road near the crazy kid's house. The pit loomed ahead, a jagged scar in the earth deep and wide, its edges crumbling under our weight. We skidded down, laughing, kicking up clouds of dust, eager to claim the space as our own. He was already there, crouched in the center of the pit, his back to us. The crazy kid. Something about his stillness stopped us cold, our laughter dying in our throats. The air felt heavier, charged with a wrongness I couldn't name. His shoulders hunched, his hands moving with purpose, and as we crept closer, a strange smell hit me. Sharp, chemical, like bleach gone bad. I saw the glint of glass, a small bottle in his hand, and a box that looked like a chemistry set, its contents scattered in the dirt. Then I saw it, the frog pinned to the ground, its body writhing in agony. My stomach lurched. The frog was alive, its limbs stretched taut, each leg pierced by a pin from his biology kit. He'd sliced it open, a crude gash across its belly, exposing its insides to the merciless sun. His face when he turned to us was alight with a sick joy, a grin so wide it seemed to split his skull. He held a scalpel, its blade catching the light, and the bottle, hydrochloric acid I later learned, dripped a clear liquid into the frog's open wound. The creature convulsed, its tiny body arching in silent screams, and he laughed, a high, manic sound that echoed off the pit's walls. I wanted to run, to scream, but my feet were rooted, my eyes locked on the horror unfolding before me. "Cool, huh?" he said, his voice bright, as if he'd built a model rocket, not tortured a living thing. Tommy stepped back, his face pale. Jake muttered something, but even his bravado faltered. Billy looked ready to cry, and Nate just stared, his silence louder than any words. I felt bile rise in my throat, the chemical stench burning my nose. The frog's struggle slowed, its body twitching in a final, futile fight. The crazy kid poured more acid, his laughter growing wilder, his eyes gleaming with a hunger I didn't understand. This wasn't a kid playing a prank. This was something monstrous wearing a boy's skin. I don't know what broke the spell, but I turned and ran, my sneakers slipping on the dirt. The others followed, their breaths ragged. But his laughter chased us, a sound that felt like claws on my spine. I didn't stop until I reached my house, bursting into the garage and climbing into the loft. I curled up under old army blankets, my chest heaving, tears streaming down my face. The image of the frog, pinned, gutted, burning, played on a loop, its pain mirrored in my own. I couldn't shake the sound of his laugh, the way his eyes had locked on mine, as if inviting me to join him. That night I dreamed of the pit, but the frog had my face and he was still smiling. I never told my parents. I was afraid they'd call his, and the crazy kid would brand me a snitch, a coward. At dinner, I pushed food around my plate, my appetite gone, my mother's worried eyes searching mine. I lied, said I was tired, but the truth was I felt broken, tainted by what I'd seen. The next day, I avoided the woods, the pit, him. The gang drifted apart after that, our bond frayed by the weight of what we'd witnessed. Tommy stopped leading, Jake's dares grew reckless, and Billy clung to his mom even more. Nate spoke less, if that was possible, and we all steered clear of the crazy kid. He became a ghost in the neighborhood, more isolated, more unhinged. His mother came to our houses one night, drunk and desperate, asking why no one liked her boy. But she knew. The whispers spread, stories of broken toys, dead birds, and that day in the pit. He dropped out of school years later, sent to some program for troubled kids, and we breathed easier, though the damage was done. But the pit never left me, a scar on my mind that throbs when I think too long. Now at 55, I'm a father, a grandfather, but that day still haunts me. I see it in flashes. The frog's twitching body, the glint of the scalpel, his grin. I wonder what became of him, if he grew into the monster he promised to be. I read about serial killers, their childhoods marked by cruelty to animals, and my blood runs cold. Was he one of them waiting in the pit of his own mind? I don't know, and I pray I never find out. But I know this: some evils are born, not made, and I saw one that day, laughing in the dirt. In the late afternoon of April 29, 1981, the Pike National Forest stood silent, its towering pines bathed in the golden haze of a fading sun. The air carried the scent of earth and resin, a deceptive calm that cloaked Topaz Point in serenity. Reverend Maurice Demetz, an 84-year-old man of faith, knelt in a sandy pit chasing his beloved rocks. By dusk he was gone, swallowed by the forest's secrets, leaving no trace but an empty hole and a mystery that haunts to this day. Maurice Demetz was a man woven from the fabric of devotion and curiosity. Born in Blue Rapids, Kansas on June 24, 1896, he carried the quiet strength of the Midwest in his bones. After high school, he chased knowledge at Hastings College in Nebraska, only to abandon it months shy of graduation, drawn to the divine call of Omaha's Presbyterian Theological Seminary. His thirst for understanding led him to a master's in theology at the University of Denver, followed by studies at Rockman College. From 1923 to 1943, Maurice shaped souls as associate editor of Grace and Truth, a Christian magazine where his words offered solace. It was there he met Myrtle, a woman whose warmth matched his conviction. They married on June 1, 1930, settling in Longmont, Colorado, where their daughter, Martha Ann, filled their home with light. Maurice's life was a tapestry of service, editing Christian journals, serving on the Longmont Chamber of Commerce, and guiding the Denver Bible College Board of Trustees. Yet beneath his pastoral duties burned an eccentric passion, his beloved rocks. To him, they were more than minerals. They were God's artistry, each quartz crystal or hematite shard a testament to creation's wonder. He was a pillar of the American Federation of Mineral Societies and the Flatiron's Gem and Mineral Club, his eyes lighting up as he spoke of topaz or amethyst. Even in his 80s, frail but unyielding, Maurice ventured into the wilds, shovel in hand, to unearth nature's treasures. Feel the forest's stillness wrap around you, its beauty hiding a truth too vast to grasp. Something waits in the shadows, unseen, unyielding. On that fateful spring day in 1981, Maurice set out with David McSherry, a younger friend whose strength complemented the Reverend's determination. They drove to Topaz Point, a remote corner of Pike National Forest, west of Colorado Springs, where over 1 million acres of rugged beauty sprawled across the counties. The forest was split by Rampart Range Road, a 45-mile dirt track offering breathtaking views of Pikes Peak and the Terriel Mountains. Campers and bikers roamed its trails, and atop Devil's Head stood Colorado's last fire lookout tower, a solitary sentinel. Maurice, dressed in a white baseball cap, maroon plaid flannel and brown work boots, leaned on David as they reached a sandy pit near the road, its soil glinting with promise. The two men dug in silence, the only sounds the scrape of shovels and the rustle of pine needles overhead. Maurice, his hands gnarled but steady, sifted through the sand, his face alight with the joy of discovery. After a time, he suggested David start a new trench 50 yards away, giving each space to work. Hours passed, the sun sinking low, casting long shadows that merged with the trees. Around 3 p.m., David wiped sweat from his brow and walked back to Maurice's pit, ready to call it a day. The Reverend agreed, his voice soft but clear. David returned to his trench to gather his tools, expecting to see Maurice trudging uphill to the car. But when David reached the vehicle, the pit was empty. Maurice was gone. His shovel, his bag, vanished, as if the earth had claimed them. No footprints led away, no broken branches marked a path. David's heart quickened. He called Maurice's name, his voice swallowed by the forest's eerie hush. He circled the lot, peering into the underbrush, hoping to find the old man resting or relieving himself. Nothing. Panic crept in, not because Maurice was frail, he was fit for his age, but because his absence felt unnatural, like a page torn from a book. David leaned on the car's horn, the sound jarring against the silence, but no answer came. Maurice Demitz had dissolved into the wilderness. Close your eyes. See the empty pit, the sand undisturbed, the forest watching. Can you feel the chill of a truth that defies reason? By 11 p.m., the Douglas County Sheriff's Department descended on Topaz Point, their search and rescue team scouring the dark, with flashlights. Nearly 100 volunteers joined at dawn, forming human chains that moved through the pines, eyes scanning for any sign, a cap, a boot, a glint of metal. Tracker dogs, trained to catch the faintest scent, raced across the hills, but they faltered, circling Maurice's pit with confused whines. The dogs found nothing beyond that hallowed ground, as if Maurice had never left it. Searchers whispered their frustration, their boots sinking into the earth that refused to speak. For 2 to 3 weeks they combed the forest, but each day returned emptier than the last. Maurice, his tools, his very essence, gone as if erased by an unseen hand. Myrtle Demitz, her heart shattered, refused to accept defeat. She wrote an open letter to Colorado's governor, her words raw with grief and fury, accusing him of abandoning her husband. She insisted Maurice's disappearance was no accident, that something sinister had stolen him. Many dismissed her as a widow lost to sorrow, but others, volunteers who'd walk those woods, nodded in quiet agreement. The dog's failure to track Maurice beyond the pit suggested he'd been taken, perhaps by vehicle, against his will. No natural explanation, fit, no blood, no struggle, no cries. Yet the absence of evidence was its own kind of terror. Picture Myrtle at her desk, pen trembling, her faith battling despair. The forest's silence mocks her, hiding a truth she'll never know. In 1999, years after that fateful day, a Colorado Supreme Court judge declared Maurice deceased in absentia, a legal end to a story without closure. His family pleaded for a verdict of unlawful death, hoping to force a new investigation. But the judge saw no proof of foul play. No blood, no witnesses, no signs of violence, only a void where Morris once stood. The ruling of misadventure felt like a betrayal to Myrtle, a dismissal of her conviction that evil had claimed her love. Theories swirled, each a desperate attempt to fill the gap. Some believed Maurice's blood disorder, a silent affliction, had finally overtaken him, his body collapsing in some hidden ravine. Others whispered of suicide, a choice to end his days among his beloved rocks rather than in a hospice bed. Yet, Maurice, a man of unshakable faith, lived by the Bible's teachings. Self-destruction seemed unthinkable. A darker rumor pointed to David McSherry, accusing him of murdering his friend for a secret stash of topaz. But David, questioned relentlessly, bore no guilt in the eyes of the law, his shock too raw to fake. And so the question lingered, a specter in the pines. What took Maurice Demitz? Was it nature's cruelty, a human hand, or something far stranger, something that defies the light of reason? The sandy pit at Topaz Point remains untouched by time, a silent witness to a man's vanishing. The forest watches, its secrets buried deep, whispering to those who dare to listen. Maurice's story is a wound that never heals, a dream that turns to nightmare when you step too close to the truth. The black gemstone gleamed under the street lamp, cold against my skin, like a whisper from a grave I hadn't yet found. My life as a lawyer kept me tethered to courtrooms and case files, a world of late nights and bitter coffee. Back then, I'd escaped the grind at X nightclub, a neon-lit haven where my friends and I drowned our stress in music and martinis. The alley outside was a different story, dark, damp, lined with souls the city forgot. One woman stood out, her presence a quiet ache in the chaos. Her clothes were tattered, her hair a wild tangle, but her face held a beauty that stopped me cold. Feel that tug in your chest? Seeing someone who doesn't belong to the shadows but lives there anyway? She was in her late 30s, her silhouette softened by the curve of pregnancy. Her eyes, framed by impossibly long lashes, held a light that no hardship could dim. High cheekbones, a complexion like polished amber. She was radiant, even in rags. She sold stone jewelry, rough-hewn but intricate, laid out on a frayed blanket. The pieces were too cheap for their craftsmanship, a steal compared to boutique prices, but few stopped to buy. I did that first night, driven by a pang I couldn't name. Her smile, faint but real, warmed me more than the club's pulsing lights. I bought everything she had, her hands trembling as she counted the bills, and I saw my sister's face in hers, gone too soon. Let me pause here. When I was 15, my sister died of a virus that tore through our family. She'd sneak me into her room at night, braiding my hair, promising we'd conquer the world. Her loss left a hole I never filled. That woman in the alley became my ritual. Each night, I'd slip out of the club, my heels clicking on wet pavement, to find her. I bought her trinkets, rings, bracelets, each one a story carved in stone. We talked first about her craft, then about life. Her name was never shared, but her voice, soft and sorrowful, wove a bond stronger than the club's fleeting friendships. She reminded me of my sister's quiet strength, her resilience against a world that didn't care. Over weeks, I pieced together her story. She'd married young, a union forced by family, her husband a shadow in her tales. Her tone darkened when she spoke of him, her eyes distant, like she was trapped in a memory she couldn't escape. Her pregnancy, barely visible, drove her to sell jewelry, scraping together pennies for a future she wouldn't name. I wondered if she was divorced or if her husband's neglect forced her onto the streets. She never said, and I didn't push, but the weight of her silence hung between us, heavy as the alley's damp air. Ever meet someone whose pain feels like your own? A mirror you can't look away from? One night I stepped out at her usual hour, expecting her blanket spread under the street lamp. She was there but empty-handed, her face pale, her eyes glassy. My heart lurched. I rushed to her, words spilling out. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" She didn't answer, just smiled, a broken curve that cut deeper than words. She reached for my neck, her fingers cold, and fastened a pendant with a black gemstone, its weight foreign against my skin. She pressed a scrap of paper into my palm, her touch lingering. "Visit me sometime," she said, her voice a breath, then turned and faded into the dark. I stood frozen, a tear tracing my cheek, her absence echoing my sister's final goodbye. See her now? Slipping into shadow, leaving only a stone and a promise? The next night, she was gone. I waited in the alley, an hour stretching into despair. The street lamps buzzed my only company. Days passed, her blanket never returned, and the club's lights lost their pull. I stopped going, haunted by what I hadn't said, hadn't done. Then I remembered the paper, its edges soft from my grip. An address scrawled in faint ink beckoned me. I drove there, hope warring with dread, picturing her in a cramped apartment, needing help I could give. But the address led to no home. Just a crumbling building, its windows boarded, its walls tagged with graffiti. Step inside, feel the air turn sour, thick with secrets no one should know. I pushed the door open, the wood groaning, and a stench hit me. Rotten, wet, like death itself. I covered my nose, my flashlight cutting through the gloom, and followed the smell, each step heavier than the last. In a back room I found her. Her body lay broken, guts splayed, crushed beneath a massive rock that hadn't fallen. It was placed, deliberate, cruel. Her face, once radiant, was frozen in agony, her blood pooling between cracked floorboards. I screamed, my voice raw, and collapsed, my knees bruising against the concrete. See her there, lifeless, her unborn child. Stolen, a crime too monstrous to fathom? I called 911, my hands shaking, words choking in my throat. Police swarmed the scene, their questions a blur as I recounted our nights, her gift, her disappearance. They sent me home, but sleep wouldn't come. I couldn't eat, couldn't think, consumed by grief and rage. My sister's death had been a tragedy, but this was murder, a theft of light I couldn't forgive. The autopsy brought a chill deeper than loss. She'd died Friday night, they said, but I'd seen her Saturday, her pendant cold against my skin. Was she already gone? Her spirit guiding me to her truth? The gemstone burned in my palm, a clue I hadn't seen. I remembered her wearing that pendant, its black stone catching the street lamp's glow. If her husband, Javier, had touched it, his fingerprints might remain. I hadn't handled the stone, much preserving its secrets. I raced to the police station, the officer's eyes widening as I handed over the pendant, claiming I'd found it outside the club. Forensics confirmed my hunch. Javier's prints, older than mine, marked him as her killer. He'd vanished after her death. A life insurance policy in her name his motive. Feel that fire in your veins, knowing a monster walks free, but not for long? I filed a report, hired private investigators, their faces grim with purpose. Javier was in Las Vegas, a lead whispered through their networks. He thought he'd won, his blood money within reach. But I was coming. The pendant stayed with me, its weight a vow. I'd find him, drag him to justice, for her child, for the sister I'd lost twice. The alley's shadows still call, her face in every flicker of light, her voice in the wind. I drive toward Vegas now, the gemstone cold against my heart, her truth my only guide. The shadow stood at the edge of the parking lot watching me, as if it knew my name before I ever spoke. I was Stuart, the new manager at a Walmart in a nowhere town in Arkansas, locking up the store under a moonless sky. The air was thick with the scent of asphalt and pine, the kind of night where silence feels heavier than sound. My keys jangled in my hand, the only noise in a world that seemed to hold its breath. I thought I was alone, just another late shift done. But that shadow, it wasn't right, it wasn't human. And by the time I realized what it was, I was already part of its endless nightmare. The job was a golden ticket, a step up from cleaning aisles and stocking shelves. The company dangled a fat paycheck, insurance, and a house bigger than I'd ever dreamed. I didn't know the town, didn't know its people, but I didn't care. The corporate office was my next stop, and this was my proving ground. The Walmart sat on the edge of a forest, its neon sign buzzing faintly, surrounded by a sprawl of empty lots and crumbling roads. The town was small, a speck forgotten by time, where public transport was a myth, and the dark pressed close after sunset. I had a company car, a lifeline in a place where walking meant vanishing into the trees. Each night, I was the last to leave, locking the doors after the registers were balanced and the employees gone. The routine was simple: check the aisles, secure the cash, and drive home through the silent woods. For months it was uneventful, the kind of monotony that lulls you into complacency. But then, one night, something shifted. I was late, tangled, in paperwork, the clock ticking past midnight. As I stepped into the parking lot, my flashlight beam caught a figure at the far corner, where the asphalt met the trees. It stood motionless, a silhouette too tall, too thin, its edges blurred like a smudge on reality. I called out, my voice cracking, but it didn't move, just watched as if it had always been there. "Stores closed," I shouted, my words swallowed by the night. A voice drifted back, low and calm. "I'll be out of your hair in a bit." I froze, my heart stuttering. It wasn't threatening, but it was wrong, like hearing your own echo in a stranger's mouth. I climbed into my car, my hands shaking, and drove home, telling myself it was just a drifter. The next morning I checked the corner. Nothing, not a footprint, not a trace. The day passed smoothly, the store humming with life. But as night fell, I felt it again. That weight, that watchfulness. I locked up, my eyes scanning the lot, and there it was. Same spot, same shadow, standing like a sentinel. "Stores closed," I yelled, louder, bolder. The same reply came, word for word. "I'll be out of your hair in a bit." It became a ritual, a haunting I couldn't shake. Every night the shadow waited, never closer, never farther. I checked the cameras, nothing but static where it stood. I asked my staff, but no one lingered after hours. I started to doubt my eyes, my sanity. But the voice was real, its tone too familiar, too intimate. One night it changed. There were two shadows now, side by side, their outlines flickering like bad film. I gripped my keys, my pulse racing, and shouted again, but this time the voice said my name. "Don't worry, Stuart, we'll move." My name? How did it know my name? I couldn't ignore it anymore. I called a meeting, asked my team if anyone was pranking me, but their blank faces told me nothing. Juan, my assistant, checked the cameras again, still nothing. Not even me shouting at the empty lot. I was unraveling, my nights sleepless, my days shadowed by dread. I decided Juan would close with me to prove I wasn't mad. That night we locked up together, his skepticism a thin comfort. As we stepped into the lot, there they were, two shadows, clearer now, their forms almost human. Juan saw them too, his face draining, his voice a whisper. "That's not right, boss." We approached, my flashlight shaking, and I demanded, "Who are you?" No answer, just their stillness, their gaze. Juan clutched my arm, urging me to leave, but I needed answers. The shadows shimmered, their edges dissolving, then reappearing closer. I shouted again, and one laughed, a cold, hollow sound that crawled inside me. We ran for the car, Juan fumbling with his keys, and as we peeled out, something heavy struck the roof. I looked back, saw nothing, but the shadows were moving, faster now, chasing us through the trees. Juan floored it, the car swerving, and then the world exploded into light and pain. I woke in the wreckage, blood streaming down my face. The car crumpled against a wall. Juan was beside me, his neck twisted at a sickening angle, his eyes empty. I stumbled out, my legs failing, and saw it. The parking lot, the Walmart, the same corner. A shadow stood there alone now, watching. I blinked, my vision swimming, and it moved closer, its face sharpening into focus. It was me. I was the shadow. My own bloodied reflection, trapped in this moment, this death. Juan stood beside me, his form faint, and I understood. We were gone, caught in a loop, our souls tethered to this cursed lot. Every night I relive it, the lock, the shadows, the crash, the truth. I see myself, see Juan, see the corner where we wait, forever calling, forever answering. The Walmart looms, its lights flickering, a prison for the ghosts we became. I don't know why, don't know how, but I know this. We're here, and we're not alone. Something else watches, something older, hungrier, and it knows my name. Every Saturday, sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of our church, painting the pews in hues of crimson and gold. The air smelled of polished wood and burning candles, a sanctuary of peace. But in the spring of my 18th year, a man named Nate sat among us, his eyes like daggers, turning my sacred haven into a hunting ground. I was 18, fresh into adulthood, but my face betrayed me. With my slight frame and soft features, people always thought I was 16, maybe younger. A blessing, my friends teased, but it felt like a curse when it drew the wrong kind of attention. I'm Latina, raised in a sprawling, diverse city where our church, a cornerstone of a larger religious network, was my second home. I'd grown up there, baptized as a baby, singing hymns before I could read. The congregation was family, there, faces as familiar as my own reflection. But one man, Nate, was different. From the moment he arrived, his presence churned my stomach, a sickening unease I couldn't shake. Our church had a ritual after service. We'd form a line, shaking hands, exchanging smiles. I dreaded passing Nate. His grip lingered too long, his eyes too intense, boring into me like he saw something no one else did. I told my mom, my voice trembling, but she brushed it off. "It's in your head," she said, her tone gentle but firm. I wanted to believe her, to trust that my sanctuary was safe, but Nate's stare followed me, a shadow I couldn't outrun. Feel the weight of his gaze like a hand on your shoulder you can't shake off. The church hums with hymns, but dread creeps in, poisoning the air. One Saturday, a few months after my birthday, I sat in the church's dining hall laughing with my friend's boyfriend. We were waiting for her, swapping stories, the room warm with familiarity. Nate was there, 2 tables away, alone. His eyes locked on me, unblinking, a predator, sizing up prey. My laughter faltered. I leaned closer to my friend's boyfriend, whispering, "That guy, Nate, he creeps me out." He nodded, but before he could reply, I excused myself to the restroom, needing to escape that suffocating stare. When I returned, Nate was at our table, sitting across from my friend's boyfriend, his voice low and insistent. My skin prickled. As I approached, a group of our friends arrived, their chatter breaking the tension. We were 8 now, ages 16 to 22, a tight-knit youth group forged in years of shared prayers. Nate stayed, silent, his eyes flicking to me every few seconds. I shifted in my seat, my dress, a modest knee-length skirt, feeling too tight under his scrutiny. My friend's boyfriend stood abruptly. "We've got a youth meeting," he said, and we fled, leaving Nate alone, his gaze burning into my back. In the meeting room, my friend's boyfriend pulled me and his girlfriend aside. "When you left," he told me, "Nate came over asking about you, wanted to know if I was your boyfriend. He seemed angry but relaxed when I said no." My friend's face paled. "He did that to me too," she said. "When he first came to church, he messaged me on Facebook saying he was lonely, wanting to be friends. It stopped when I posted about dating you." My blood ran cold. I'd been off social media, recovering from an ex who'd harassed me, online. But her words gnawed at me, and that night I logged into Facebook. Hundreds of messages waited. A flood from an account not bearing Nate's name. A red flag I'd missed. They started innocently. "God bless you, I'd love to be friends." But they turned dark, accusing me of ignoring him, raging about me talking to guy friends at church. My hands shook as I scrolled each word a violation. I blocked him, deleted the thread. A mistake I later realized. Evidence gone. I told my parents, but they dismissed it again. "It's cultural," they said, citing Nate's El Salvadoran roots as if affection excused obsession. I swallowed my fear, praying they were right. "Close your eyes. See the glow of your phone." His words crawling across the screen. "The church's peace is a lie, and he's closer than you think." Weeks later, my parents' denial shattered. Nate had started at the front pew, but over months he inched back one row at a time until he sat on our bench. My friends a flimsy barrier. That Saturday I wore a knee-length dress, a cardigan over my shoulders despite the heat, adhering to our church's strict dress code. I whispered to my friends during the afternoon service, ignoring Nate's presence. Usually we'd linger to socialize, but my mom rushed us to the car, her face tight with urgency. My friend, the one Nate had messaged, was sleeping over, and my dad asked us to grab pizzas and meet him at his hospital's cafeteria, where he worked nights. The cafeteria was empty at 8:30 p.m., its fluorescent lights harsh. We ate, laughed, until my dad sent my grandmother and brothers outside to play chess. Alone with us, he apologized, his voice heavy. "I didn't believe you about Nate," he said. My heart stopped. He explained. During the morning service, my mom had glanced back and seen Nate staring at me, his eyes hungry, predatory. She'd urged my dad to confront him. Nate's response chilled them. "Your daughter and I are in a beautiful, committed relationship. It's God's will. You shouldn't interfere." My dad, stunned, called him sick, insisting he pursue women his age. I broke down, tears streaming, my gut's warnings validated. Nate wasn't just watching, he was planning, moving closer, waiting to strike. My dad reported Nate to the pastors, but one shouted, "Are we letting him do this again?" My stomach churned. I wasn't the first. I dug deeper, calling contacts at other churches in our network, warning them about Nate. My efforts uncovered 3 other girls, 13, 15, and 16, each with the same story. Social media messages, in-person advances, a predator cloaked in faith. The 13-year-old's sister had scared him off. The 16-year-old's cousins had confronted him, possibly violently, prompting police involvement, but only for the cousins, not his actions. The 15-year-old from my church had endured texts and calls at all hours, her brother blaming her for leading him on. Rage consumed me. Nate was set to become a pastor despite my dad's complaints. The betrayal cut deep. Feel your heart race as the truth unfolds, each revelation a knife. He's not just a man, he's a monster, and no one's stopping him. Demanded we see a lawyer. A family friend connected us to one, but the news crushed me. No restraining order was possible without threats or physical harm. Texas law tied our hands. My dad told the pastors we were seeking legal counsel, but rumors spread like wildfire. By the next Saturday, lifelong friends called me a gold digger, accusing me of provoking Nate with provocative clothes. My modest dresses and cardigans weaponized against me. My favorite uncle sided with them, his betrayal a wound that never healed. My love for him died, straining our family's ties. I stopped attending church, my sanctuary stolen. Nate vanished too, his fake account silent, but the damage lingered. The hostility grew until the church's president held a hearing, absurdly deeming my dad a troublemaker for defending me. He was banned, and we chose to leave as a family. My dad's farewell was dignified, urging the congregation to learn from their mistakes. Tears fell, even from those who'd slandered us, but their regret came too late. An older woman, once my grandma's friend, claimed I'd stopped loving them. No, I wanted to scream. You called me vile names, you who cradled me as a child. Nate's shadow haunts me. I know he's out there hunting other girls, his obsession growing darker. I enrolled in self-defense and kickboxing, carry pepper spray and a taser, got a carry license. My dad turned our home into a fortress, my mom and grandma checking locks nightly. Church, once my refuge, is a place I can't return to. Nate took that from me, but he taught me to trust my gut, even when the world says it's all in my head. I live, I fight, but I'll never stop looking over my shoulder, knowing monsters wear the faces of saints. The sea swallowed my breath, its darkness a mirror where faces not my own stared back. I was a marine biologist, my days spent chasing secrets in the ocean's depths. That spring, our team hunted a fossil, a jagged relic hinting at a new species, off the coast near our lab. The water was my second home, its currents as familiar as my pulse. But that dive, with the sun sinking and the sea turning ink black, felt different, like stepping into a dream that wasn't mine. Feel that chill in your bones, diving into a void that knows your name? My team of 5 scoured the reef, cataloging fish and coral, but I was laser-focused on the fossil. Christian, a colleague with sharp instincts and eyes I lingered on too long, joined me. I'd picked him for his skill, though a flicker of a crush sparked my choice. The lab was a short drive from the shore, and by dusk we were suited up, tanks, heavy, masks fogging with our breath. We plunged in, the water cold and alive, swallowing us whole. Bubbles rose like ghosts, the reef glowing faintly under our lights. I scanned the seabed, my fins stirring silt, the fossil's promise pulling me deeper. See the ocean now, its shadows shifting, hiding truths older than time. Let me pause here. At 19, I interned on a dive team off Bermuda. One night, my mentor vanished mid-dive, his light snuffed out. We found him tangled in a net, eyes open, lifeless. That fear of the sea-turning traitor never left me. Hours passed, the sky above a memory as night claimed the depths. I was lost in my work, scraping samples, when my beam caught something unnatural, a hulking shape, jagged and still. A ship, its hull encrusted with barnacles, loomed from the murk. It was ancient, untouched, a relic no diver had logged. Our team scoured these waters weekly. How had it stayed hidden? My pulse quickened, curiosity overriding caution. I signaled Christian I'd explore further, my hands tracing signs in the water. He nodded, staying back with the samples, his light a distant star. The ship's aura was wrong, heavy like a scream trapped in silence. I've seen wrecks before, rusted freighters, sunken yachts, but this felt alive, its timbers pulsing with a secret. I circled its deck, the wood splintered, ropes swaying like veins. Nothing stirred, yet I felt watched, eyes unseen boring into me. I moved to the engine room, its door gaping. My light swept inside and my heart stopped. 2 skeletons, slumped, against the wall, their bones polished by time, jaws locked in silent cries. I flinched, my breath loud in my mask, but I'd seen bones before. Why did these feel like they were waiting for me? I turned to leave, the ship's weight pressing on my chest when a glint caught my eye. A door sealed shut, its lock rusted but intact. It was locked from the outside, a detail that clawed at my mind. Against every instinct, I touched it, and the lock crumbled, the door swinging inward. My light trembled, revealing a nightmare. Hundreds of skeletons filled the room, tangled in. A frozen dance, their skulls cracked, limbs twisted. Chains bound, some melted into bone as if they'd been locked alive, left to suffocate. See them now, their empty eyes pleading. Their deaths a secret the sea kept? My heart thundered, my tank's air thinning. The ship's aura thickened, a hum that wasn't sound but feeling, wrapping me in dread. I backed out, my fins kicking, silt and swam upward, desperate for the surface. But as I neared the ship's edge, a force stopped me, cold, invisible, like a wall of glass. I pushed, my hands meeting nothing but resistance, panic clawing my throat. Christian's light bobbed, far off, his silhouette blurred, unaware. I fumbled for my transceiver, but it was dead, static mocking my cries. I swam the ship's perimeter, my lungs burning, the wall encircling me, unyielding. Feel that trap closing, the sea itself holding you captive? Despair crept in, my strength fading when a strange urge surged, a reckless need to fight. I swung, my knife slashing at nothing, and the barrier shattered, the water rushing free. I broke through, my body trembling, and Christian's eyes met mine, wide with relief. I pointed back, hands shaking, but the ship was gone, the seabed empty as if I'd dreamed it. He grabbed my arm, pulling me up, but a current tugged us, cold and deliberate, from where the ship had been. It felt alive, angry, a final warning. We broke the surface, gasping, the stars above indifferent. On shore, Christian's voice was sharp. "Where'd you go? You vanished for an hour." I stared at him, the sea lapping at my feet. "The ship," I said, my voice hollow. "You saw me swim to it." He shook his head. "No ship, just you diving deeper than gone." My knees buckled, the world spinning, and I passed out, the sea's hum in my ears. I woke in the lab's nursing room, fever burning through me for days. The team called it exhaustion, but I knew better. That ship wasn't just a wreck, it was a tomb, and it wanted me to stay. I returned to work, my dives cautious, my team always close. The fossil project moved on, but the ship haunted me. Not in nightmares, but in quiet moments, its skeletons whispering questions I couldn't answer. Was it sunk on purpose, a massacre sealed in the deep? The sea keeps its secrets, and I've stopped chasing them alone. Christian and I stayed colleagues, my crush a fleeting spark, drowned by the weight of that night. I carry the knife still, its blade nicked from striking the unseen, a reminder of a truth I'll never grasp. The fog clung to the streets like a shroud, hiding the evil that stole Cheryl Spiegel on her 10th birthday. It was October 19th, 1971, in a quiet Kentucky town where kids still walked to school and neighbors left doors unlocked. Cheryl woke that morning with a smile, her heart racing for cake and presents promised after school. She lingered in bed, savoring the extra minutes, her brothers already gone to catch the bus. At 6:25 a.m., she stepped out alone, her small figure swallowed by the mist, her backpack bouncing with each step. She never reached the bus stop. That day something or someone waited in the shadows, and Cheryl's laughter was silenced forever. The town of Fort Mitchell was a postcard of small-town America, its streets lined with neat houses and maple, trees turning gold. But beneath the charm lay an unease, a whisper of danger that no one named. Cheryl's family, the Spiegels, were ordinary. Her father a factory worker, her stepmother a homemaker, Her brothers loud and rough but loving. Cheryl was the light of their home, a girl with pigtails and a giggle that could melt anyone. Her birthday was meant to be special, a day of joy in a world that felt safe. But as the morning wore on and the school bus rolled by without her, a chill settled over the Spiegel house. Her father noticed first, his coffee cup frozen mid-sip when the school called. Cheryl wasn't there. He checked her room, her bed still unmade, her favorite teddy bear staring blankly from the pillow. Panic took root, spreading like wildfire. The police were called, their sirens cutting through the fog, drawing neighbors to their porches. Officers canvassed the streets, knocking on doors, but the town was eerily silent, as if it held a secret it wouldn't share. Cheryl's brothers, pale and wide-eyed, swore she'd left after them, her footsteps fading into the mist. The streets were empty that morning. No witnesses, no clues, only the fog, thick and unyielding, hiding what had taken her. Days turned to weeks, hope fading like the autumn leaves. The local paper spun tales of a runaway, a desperate theory that stung the Spiegels. Cheryl wasn't that girl. She loved her family, her dog, her books. The police interviewed classmates, neighbors, even her father, but found nothing. The town whispered, rumors swirling like the fog. Was it a stranger, a drifter, or someone closer, someone they all knew? The Spiegels clung to each other, their home a fortress of grief. Cheryl's absence a wound that bled anew each day. In their dreams, she called to them, her voice faint, trapped in a place they couldn't reach. 2 weeks later, a milk delivery driver pulled over on a lonely country, rode his bladder demanding relief. The creek below caught his eye, its water glinting under the weak November sun. A pile of stones, stacked like a crude pyramid, stood out against the muddy bank. Curiosity drew him closer, his boots sinking into the earth. Then he saw it, a small arm, pale and discolored, peeking from a crevice in the stones. His breath caught, his stomach churning as he realized what lay beneath. He scrambled back to his truck, radioing for help, his voice shaking. The stones weren't random. They were a marker, a twisted monument to a child's death. Police swarmed the scene, their lights flashing against the barren trees. They uncovered Cheryl's body, stripped bare, her skin marred by 26 tiny wounds, punctures like needle pricks, so deep some pierced through her. The wounds weren't from a knife, but something stranger, more precise, as if crafted for cruelty. There was no sign of violation, a small mercy in a sea of horror, but the savagery of the attack spoke of a mind unhinged. The stones, carefully placed, suggested ritual, a chilling detail that haunted the officers. Cheryl's father was called to identify her, his knees buckling as he faced her broken form, her birthday joy now a memory stolen by violence. The town reeled, its innocence shattered. Cheryl was buried 2 days later at Highland Cemetery, a small service under a gray sky, her family too numb to weep. The police scoured the area, finding little: a gas station, a bank ATM, a McDonald's open late, all empty at the hour Cheryl vanished. 4 men emerged as suspects, each a thread in a tapestry of suspicion. The first, a neighbor across the street, was known for watching children, his stare cold and predatory. He refused a polygraph but had an alibi, working in Cincinnati that morning. The second, another neighbor, was a drug addict with a violent past, the last to see Cheryl alive. He passed a polygraph, his flimsy alibi holding just enough. The third, the milk driver, was too close to the scene, his route ending where Cheryl was found. He passed a polygraph, his grief seeming genuine. The fourth, a local businessman, bragged years later of killing her, but his polygraph cleared him, his words dismissed as hearsay. No one was charged. The case grew cold, its files gathering dust. But the questions lingered. Why the needle-like wounds? Why the stones? Was Cheryl's birthday a cruel coincidence, or did it hold meaning for her killer? The Spiegels left town 2 months later, their silence heavy, no headstone marking Cheryl's grave. Her brother, years later, said their father never spoke of her again, as if her name was a curse. The town whispered of a monster, human or otherwise, still lurking, its hunger unsatisfied. Now, decades later, the case remains a wound in Fort Mitchell's heart. Some say Cheryl's spirit haunts the creek, her laughter echoing in the fog. Others believe the killer walks among them, hiding behind a neighbor's smile. The stones, the wounds, the silence. They weave a mystery no one can unravel. What took Cheryl Spiegel that morning? Was it a man or something darker, something that hunts children in the mist? The Dublin Park stretched dark and quiet before me, its paths lit by the faint glow of street lamps, their light pooling like liquid gold on the damp grass. Leaves rustled in the evening breeze, a soft whisper that usually soothed me after a long day at work. But that night, as I walked the familiar diagonal trail, a man sat on a metal bench, his silhouette jagged against the dusk. His presence turned the air heavy, and my heart sensed danger before my mind could name it. My name is Rachel, and I'm 23, a Dubliner born and bred. Every evening, my commute home from the office takes me through this park, a green oasis in the city's heart. Its winding paths and ancient oaks are as familiar as my own reflection, a daily ritual that grounds me. I'm not naive. Growing up in a city teaches you to spot trouble. I've dodged creepy types before, opting for a taxi when my gut screamed caution. But that evening, as I stepped onto the gravel trail, nothing felt off. The park was calm, the air cool with the promise of autumn. I popped in my earbuds, music drowning out the world, and started my walk. Halfway through, I noticed him, a man on one of the metal benches that dotted the path. He sat slouched, hands in his pockets, staring at the ground. Middle-aged, maybe, 50, with a weathered jacket and scruffy hair. He seemed harmless, just another soul passing time. I kept walking, my sneakers crunching softly, the music in my ears a steady beat. But as I drew closer, a prickle ran down my neck. He lifted his head, his eyes catching mine for a fleeting second before darting away. I told myself it was nothing, just a glance, but my pace quickened. Feel the air grow thick. The park's calm now a mask for something sinister. His eyes linger, and you know you're not alone. A few feet past the bench, I heard it. A low mumble, words I couldn't catch, but unmistakably aimed at me. My heart skipped. I kept my gaze forward, ignoring him, willing the path to end. Then a rustle behind me, the scrape of boots on gravel. I glanced over my shoulder, and there he was, standing, moving toward me. Panic flared, but I pushed it down, yanking out my earbuds. His voice cut through, loud and grating. "Hello, love," he called, a mocking edge to his tone. I walked faster, my hands trembling as I fumbled with my phone, switching it to record video. I held it low, angling it to capture him without him noticing, a shield against the unknown. He kept pace, his steps heavy, his voice growing bolder. "Hello? You deaf or something?" I spun around, my voice sharp. "I'm not deaf, I just don't want to talk to you." His face came into focus. Ruddy cheeks, bloodshot eyes, a half-empty vodka bottle swinging in his hand. He was older than I'd thought, his grin childish yet menacing, like a bully emboldened by liquor. "Why not, love?" he pressed, stepping closer. "I just want to chat." I shook my head, my words firm despite the tremor in my chest. "You shouldn't follow strangers through parks. Leave me alone." He laughed. a wet, ugly sound. Nothing wrong with the walk. I just want to be friends. I turned, my legs carrying me toward the park's exit, the streetlights of my neighborhood glowing just beyond. His voice trailed me, persistent, needling. Come on, don't be like that. I ignored him, focusing on the path, but the cobbled trail narrowed at the anti-cycle gates, a metal maze designed to slow bikes but now a trap for me. I had to slow down, weaving through the bars, my breath hitching. He was closer now, his shadow looming in the corner of my eye. How about a hug then? He slurred, his tone mocking but hungry. Fury surged through me. No, you can't have a hug. Are you out of your mind? I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. You're at the gate, the exit so close, but his shadow grows larger. Your anger burns, but fear is clawing its way up your throat. I shouldn't have stopped, but I did, halfway through the gate, my outrage rooting me in place. That's what he wanted. His hand shot out, grabbing the sleeve of my coat. I yanked back, but he stepped forward, his grip tightening on my arm. His fingers were cold, his breath sour with vodka, his grin wide and gleeful. Savoring my struggle, my heart pounded, a drumbeat of terror. I scanned the park, desperate for help, but it was empty. No joggers, no dog walkers, just the endless rustle of leaves. Let go, I choked out, my voice breaking, a lump swelling in my throat. I'd expected to fight, to scream, but fear paralyzed me, turning my defiance to dust. His eyes gleamed, drinking in my panic, his grip unyielding. I pulled harder, stumbling through the gate, shouting, "Leave me alone!" He laughed, a sound that curled my stomach but didn't follow. I didn't look back, couldn't risk seeing him still there. My legs moved on instinct, carrying me. Toward the park's exit, my flat slipping on the gravel. I turned onto my street, the familiar row of houses a lifeline. Half a block away, a man knelt in his garden, tending roses under a porch light. Relief crashed over me, but it was fragile, ready to shatter. I hurried toward him, my breath ragged. He looked up, his face kind but concerned, sensing my distress. "Are you okay?" he asked, standing. I glanced back, heart stopping, but the man was gone, swallowed by the park's shadows. The dam broke. Tears streamed down my face, my body shaking as I gasped out the story. "Please call the guardie," I begged, my voice raw. He nodded, pulling out his phone, his calm anchoring me as I stood there, trembling, wishing I'd worn better shoes. Anything to have run faster. "You're safe now." But the park's darkness lingers, his grin etched in your mind. The guardie come, but will they stop him? The guardie arrived, their questions gentle but probing. I showed them the video, blurry but damning, his voice clear as he taunted me. They promised to speak to him, warning him against approaching women uninvited. I went home, locking every door, checking windows twice, his face haunting my dreams. Days later, walking a different route, I passed the park's edge. My blood froze. There he was on the same bench, vodka bottle in hand, his eyes scanning the path like a hunter waiting for prey. The guardie's warning meant nothing. I turned away, my heart racing, vowing never to walk that trail again. That night changed me. I live cautious now, my keys a weapon in my fist, my routes planned to avoid shadows. The park, once my haven, is a place of fear, its benches hiding threats I can't unsee. I don't understand why men like him exist, why they take joy in terror. But I know this. My instincts saved me, and I'll never ignore them again, no matter how quiet the evening seems.